Hi everyone, my name is Steph, this is the Novelty Corner and welcome back to my channel. Today I have a Books Beside My Bed video for you, which happens to be the last Books Beside My Bed video for 2022, despite the fact that this is coming out on the first day of 2023. So Happy New Year to everyone. I have a lot of books to talk about. Between Christmas and New Year, I tend to read a lot because it's that black hole of time week where things are weird and I refuse to go out, see anyone or do anything except read. So there's a lot to talk about here. I am filming on the 31st of December. I am going to include the very last book that I read for the year, but it will not be in this setup. I may not even have makeup on by that time. I don't know what time I'm going to finish reading the book. I will put in like a vlog style clip at the very end of this video talking about my last book of the year, which is going to be Gravity by Tal Bauer, which people on Instagram voted for. It was a choice between a Marianne as a Parter book and this one won out. So stay tuned until the very end and you'll get to see the review of that. So this is my reading week from the 25th of December until the 31st of December. I had two rereads this week, which I'm not going to talk about because I have spoken about them in other videos and I've mentioned them plenty of times. And this is something that's going to be new going forward in 2023. If I've got a reread, I'll mention that I've read it, but I'm not going to talk about it because we have been there and done that, and these videos get pretty long anyway. So my first reread was The Mistletoe Motive by Chloe Lee. This is her Christmas novella and I read this on Christmas Day for obvious reasons. It's one of my favorites. And also Coffee Boy by Austen Chan. Bree from In Love and Words very kindly sent this to me as a Christmas gift. I had read it earlier in the year and I did reread it yesterday because it's so tiny and I just wanted to reread it before I put it on my shelves. All right, jumping into new titles that I read this week. I had one review copy that was sent to me by Ellen and Unwin, so thank you very much to them. It is Carly Lane's newest release, Wish You Were Here. These are small town, closed door, country or rural romances set in Australia. This one happens to be set in New South Wales. We have Reggie, who is the daughter of farmers, and at the very start of the book, the very first chapter is quite full on. She finds out that her parents have been in a car accident and have been severely injured and she needs to come home from her job overseas to help her brother take care of them. And also within months, I think months of her parents' accident, her brother also finds out that he has a brain tumor and he passes away. So the first chapter spans about 2 years, so it's all very quick, and suddenly Reggie is left with the choice of leaving her family or staying and helping on the farm, and she chooses to stay, which her family think is they're forcing her to do that, but she's actually found a passion for helping out on the family farm. The second character is Tim, who is a former Australian soldier who has lost friends to PTSD and to suicide, and he is just trying to get away from everything, and the farm happens to have like a B&B style cottage situation going on the property, and so he's rented out one of those cottages for a week, and he's very intrigued by Reggie because he sees her doing all of these jobs around the farm, and eventually he just offers to start helping out because he's not working and he just wants something to do and some company, and the two become closer. And that's essentially the story. It's about these two characters getting to know one another, breaking down the walls that they have with each other, and finding that just because they had one perception of the way their life was going to go doesn't mean that that's the way that it is going to go, and that's okay. Carly Lane's books are like a warm cup of tea. You just sit on the couch, you get something cozy to drink, maybe some snacks, and it's a delightful time. I saved this for post-Christmas because I wanted to be in a better headspace when I read it, because that's what this book deserves. I do have a blog post and an Instagram post which lists all the content trigger warnings, so you can check that out if you need to. Then I finished off the St. View Psycho series and read It Ends With Violence, which is the third and final book. This is a why choose dark romance with suspense elements woven into it. Being the third book, every book ends off in a cliffhanger. It's following the same polyamorous couple. There is some sword crossing in this book between two of the male characters. It was a fairly full-on conclusion to a series. Like, it did not let up, because at the end of the second book, one of the main characters has been taken into custody by police, except not really. They've been taken by people exacting revenge. You've got the bar that all of them work at has been trashed and raided, and all sorts of shenanigans are going on. Like, it's full on and highly entertaining. Scythe is still my favorite character out of all of the St. View books that I've read, because anytime he opens his mouth, you don't know what's going to come out. And honestly, half the time it's so inappropriate for the moment that it's just hilarious. And I'm really glad that I finished both the St. View Prison and the St. View Psycho series in 2022. I am seeing Elle Thorpe again at Rare, and I have pre-ordered the next series of St. View Books as well. So I'm very, very excited about that. Another series I wanted to tick off my finished 2022 by reading this series list was Criminal Intentions Season 1. So I haven't finished the complete series, but I finished the first season of it, which means I read books 7 through 13. They are super short and very, very quick and easy to read. These are by McCade. They are romantic suspense. They do feature 2 characters who are detectives. They are romances, and they are just so compulsively readable. I cannot explain to you guys. If you've ever watched a police procedural, like something like Criminal Minds, and you've just been compelled to keep watching episodes, that's what reading these books feels like. I don't picture things in my head. That's not the way that my brain functions, but these are just so episodic in the way that they're told that it feels like you're watching a TV show despite the fact that you're reading it. So the books that I read were Cult of Personality, Collateral Damage, A Single Bright Candle's Flame, Backdraft, Crescendo, and The Hatter's Game Part 1 and The Hatter's Game Part 2. We follow Malcolm and Xiangzhe, who by the time we hit book 7 have started to explore a relationship with each other. They are partners. Were initially reluctant partners, but now they have given in to sort of the attraction that they have to one another, and they're exploring their dynamic. And they're trying to do all of this while still working their caseload, which is huge. Throughout the whole series, Xiangzhe and Malcolm are being stalked by this mysterious character called Sila, or Sela. I'm not quite sure about the pronunciation of it, but this all begins to come to a head as Xiangzhe's past is revealed to Malcolm as things start heating up in the city. The political situation in Baltimore is really rife with issues at the moment because there was a police shooting, so you have people who are protesting that. And the commentary on that entire situation is so well done and so hard-hitting that, like, this is the compulsive readability of the series because you want to know what happens next. I'm not going to go into individual stories because that would be a lot, but suffice to say, like, if you start reading one book, you have to read the next, because even though each book has its own individual plotline, there's this massive season-long thread that is so worth reading from start to finish because it is just deeply, deeply fascinating. The cast is fantastic and diverse. I would read stories by any of the side characters in this series. I love Malcolm and Xiangzhe, but I would read any of the other characters' stories. But with these stories, check all the content warnings first. McCade does a great job, I know I've said this before, about talking about the content warnings and pre-warning you about what's going to happen. Usually the very first chapter of the book, the prologue, is the initial murder that kicks off the episode. So it is quite graphic and often has a lot of ideologies of the killers woven into it, which can be quite confronting, but Cole does go through and tell you exactly what to expect. So if you need to skip it, you can. I'm so excited next year to continue with season 2 and hopefully also start season 3, which I think has 3 or 4 episodes out already. I'm loving this series. Then I picked up another anticipated release, The Lone Wolf's Rejected Mate by Cate C. Wells. This is part of her 5 packs series. This one was just so fun. So you have Mari, who is one of the single females in this wolf pack, and she lives with the other unmated females, and she's kind of the princess of the group. She loves pink and frilly dresses, and she's just, you know, very sunshiny and lovely. And her mating bond kicks in with Dara, who is a lone wolf of the pack. And he's a lone wolf because he doesn't trust his wolf. His wolf has been damaged in some way, partly for what happened in his past. Whenever he shifts, he doesn't trust what his wolf is going to do. When their mating bond kicks in, they do sleep together, but he then rejects her straight afterwards, and she is just devastated by this. He has to do a lot of groveling to get her back. But before any of that happens, we sort of flash forward a couple of years, and she's trying to move on with her life. She's been rejected by her mate, so she sees this as a perfect opportunity to just go out, have some fun, do what she wants to do. And she ends up being kidnapped by a group of very terrible, terrible humans who are trying to also track down Dara. And so they end up kidnapped together and forced to work together, and it was just great. I absolutely loved this one. And I have to say, I loved the descriptions of Mari's wolf because her wolf is described as being white and very small, and just this adorable, playful, gorgeous little wolf, and I loved every second of that. So yes, I'm very, very excited by this world that Cate C. Wells has built, and I want to keep reading it. I also read Anna Hackett's newest release, Striker, which is the 3rd book in the Sentinel Security series. This one was Hadley's book. Hadley is a former MI6 operative, and she has been recruited by Sentinel Security, and so she's been living in New York, but at the start of this book she's back in London, and she's at this event with her boss, and she comes face to face with former SAS soldier turned billionaire Bennett Knightley. The two end up forced together while working a case where she has to go undercover in his company to try and ferret out someone who might be selling secrets of the company, and this company happens to make high-tech safety gear for soldiers. and all that information is being leaked and shipments are being stolen, and they think it's a terrorist that Hadley has previously tried to hunt down. The sparks between Hadley and Bennett were fantastic. It was, again, compulsively readable. I always like reading about the female members of the security companies in Anna Hackett's books. Hadley is always on the forefront. She's a very strong kick-ass character and I loved her a lot. Bennett was also kind of adorable for a billionaire. And I also read Flawless by Elsie Silver. This book has been everywhere this year and I was gifted this by Ebony, so I was very, very grateful to receive it. And this is a Canadian small town cowboy romance between Rhett, who is a bull rider who runs his mouth and kind of gets himself into trouble with some of his sponsors. So his agent sends his daughter Summer to babysit him for the last few rounds of the bull riding season to make sure he doesn't get into any more trouble. At first, Rhett can't stand having her around. He's chafing at the fact that he's got a babysitter. However, Summer gives as good as she gets. She is an awesome character and she is kind of at the point where she's trying to decide whether or not she wants to continue working with her father, if that's what really makes her happy, or if there is something else. There is a little bit of an age gap. Rhett is fairly old for the bull riding scene and so his body is, you know, no longer healing as effectively post rounds as it has in the past. So he's dealing with a lot of pain and a lot of injuries, and that idea of, you know, well, when is enough? A lot of things happen in this book. There are some medical scares for side characters that affect these two characters. There's some secrets about past relationships that cause friction between families. And there is also a rift between Summer and her stepmother, and this also causes huge amounts of friction. But I did love Summer's relationship with her dad. It was nice to see that kind of father-daughter relationship in a book. I will be continuing with the series. I found it very compelling and easy to read. I've only read a handful of cowboy romances, so this was fun. All right, so I'm going to cut to myself reviewing Gravity and then we'll come back and I'll wrap up this video. Okay, so I told you guys I would come back and talk about Gravity by Tal Bauer, and this book is so stinking cute. So I haven't had time to curate my thoughts on what I'm going to say for this. I'm just going to word vomit at you because this is the last book that I'll be reviewing for 2022. So this is about Bryce, who is a very famous, very successful ice hockey player. And I don't know why I'm specifying ice hockey. He's a hockey player. He plays for Montreal and they are tipped to win the Stanley Cup. And he is selected for an all-stars team and he goes to Las Vegas, and there he meets Hunter, who is sort of an average hockey player who was drafted and sort of is with a team that isn't doing well, and everyone knows that he never gives up. And when Bryce and Hunter meet and they start playing together, it's like magic. And then, you know, they get together and they have dinner and they spend a lot of time while they're in Las Vegas talking to each other, and they just really enjoy each other's company. Bryce realizes that he's falling in love and he kisses Hunter, and at first Hunter doesn't really know what to do with that. And then when all is said and done in Las Vegas, they go back to their respective teams and suddenly Bryce is just a wreck because he thinks he's ruined everything. And then Hunter gets traded to his team. It was just such a good book. I loved all of the characters. We spent a lot of time with the games and with the other teammates who are just amazing. Bring your tissues because there is something that happens in the third act that is just heartbreaking. So I will content trigger warning for violent injury on the ice that requires hospitalization and recovery time, but it's so good. I loved this. Everything about it. It is just a gorgeous book. Thank you very much for watching. If you have read any of these books, I'd love to hear your thoughts on them down below. Otherwise, you can feel free to let me know something that you have been reading. If you want to let me know that you're here but you don't want to leave a comment, feel free to leave your country's flag in the comments to let me know where you're from and that you're here. I hope that you guys all have a safe and happy start to the new year, and I will see you in my next video. Thanks so much for watching. Bye everyone.